right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is a different kind of episode for our Wine and Web3 series. Today, we've got some interesting guests with us. Some of you may recognize Michael Juergens and Anne Cross of the Bhutan Wine Company. And of course, familiar face here, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening in, David Garrett, the conceptual founder of Devin Labs, is here as well. And I am your host, Jana Kreilein, co-founder of Devin Labs. So today we are talking about a no reserve auction for the rarest bottle of wine in the world. Now, how does this all tie together when we've got, the founders of the Bhutan Wine Company here? Could we be talking about a Bhutanese wine? What? Bhutan doesn't make wine. Does Bhutan make wine? Mike and Anne, can you give us a little bit of background on yourselves and how Bhutan came to start making wine?
Okay, you want me to do it?
Little
or
background.
You want to do it?
You know what? That was a terrible intro. I'm not going to cut this because this is just how I ramble and everyone knows me by now. So Mike used to think that Bhutan was in Indonesia. Anne read a book about Bhutan and always dreamt of going there. And somehow this whole thing turned into a new commercial wine industry, maybe the last frontier of wine in the world. So you know what, Anne, I'm going to let you go first and introduce yourself and just maybe let's how you got Mike to Bhutan.
Yep, I sure will. Thanks for having me, Jana and Dave. Hey, everybody, I'm Anne Cross. I'm one of the co-founders of the Bhutan Wine Company and the CEO. And I would like to believe that perhaps some serendipity brought us to this venture, this project, this journey we've been on. I actually read a book in high school. As Jana said, I read a book in high school many years ago when I read this book about this woman who wrote a memoir. She was a Canadian woman who went to Bhutan in the 1980s to teach English. And she wrote about her time there. And I fell in love with this country that she talked about. And so for so many years, it was at the top of my bucket list to go visit, kind of really as like a pipe dream that I wanted to go. Well, Mike, my lovely partner, who I've been with for very long, he's heard me talk about this since the moment we met, essentially. And he heard about me talking about Bhutan. And so at the time, we had been running marathons all around the world. We kind of did them as run a marathon and then go experience an awesome place. So he happened to get an email from one of the distribution lists saying, hey, there is this marathon in this country called Bhutan. We're bringing some Western runners over to participate, and you can apply to be part of this group. Well, Mike was like, hey, that's the place Anne keeps talking about. I'm going to sign us up and surprise her. So he basically did it without me knowing. And a few weeks, months later, I found out that we were going. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm finally getting the chance to go to Bhutan, go to the Himalaya mountains and experience this country. And he was like, what are you talking about? Had no idea where it was, had no idea it was in the Himalayas. And I think thought it was some island in Indonesia or somewhere much warmer. And so this was almost a decade ago that we went, and we basically went to Bhutan to run this marathon. And when we were there, we fell in love with the country. I mean, I had high expectations visiting, and they exceeded even that after decades of me dreaming of going. But we fell in love with the country. But more so, it really started this journey that we didn't really intend to go on, but we were there and we were eating this amazing produce and seeing this beautiful land. And Mike, who is a wine expert and much more knowledgeable than I am, kind of kept saying like, wow, this place must have some awesome vineyards. It must have some awesome wine. And lo and behold, the last night we were there, we happened to have the opportunity to meet with some people from the government. And he said that, like, hey, you guys, where are your vineyards? You must have amazing wine. And they basically said, no, we don't. We don't have any vineyards. We don't make our own wine. And I will kick it over to Mike to kind of finish the rest of the story more colorfully than I would.
And got most of it right. I did zero research on Bhutan. I just got my running shoes and jumped on a plane and got there. And so I didn't know things like it's the only carbon negative country on the planet. I didn't know that they're on track to be the first 100% organic country. I didn't know that they grew some of the world's best crops in weird verticals like red rice and cardamom and mandarin. None of this I knew. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, we're going to the Himalayas. It's glaciers and mountains. And it is on the north side of the country, but the altitudes range from 500 feet to 25,000 feet. So you got a lot of different zones in there.
And Mike, actually, for our audience, you also didn't know that they were one of the largest sovereign Bitcoin holders in the world.
I didn't know that either. But the benefits of having access to a whole bunch of free, clean hydropower allows you to mine a shit ton of Bitcoin. So anyways, when I got there and I looked, I'm like, this place is perfect for wine. And when I found out that they didn't have any, I just felt strongly and passionately that they should do something about this. And I was like, you should do this. And I wrote a white paper. It took me about 6 months of doing a bunch of research, wrote a white paper about why they should do it. That then opened up some more doors. And then I wrote a 10-year business plan about how they could do it. And I drafted some potential wine regulations for the company. And here's how you might have governance over this. And here's what I think the benefits would be. And at the end of all of it, I'm condensing an enormous amount of work over an extended period of time. But let's just say at the end of all this, they said, we want to do it. And I was like, great. I can't wait to try the wine. And they're like, no, we want to partner with you. And I'm like, you're giving me the opportunity to be to control to shape the destiny of the next millennia of wine to come. And I get to be the guy. Hell yeah, man. And so I was like, hey, Anne, you should quit your job and be the CEO of this company. And we should go do this. And Anne was, required some convincing, but.
And also used to having lots of adventure with you. So I was like, all right, well, let's do it.
So we did it. And obviously, I think we believe anyways that the last time somebody invented a wine industry from scratch in a country that didn't have wine was New Zealand in the 1800s. So this hasn't been done in 200 years. And the number of countries with the potential to actually do it is, diminishing rapidly. Although, I don't know, with climate change, who knows, Iceland might be perfect for growing grapes 200 years from now. But for today, there's not that many countries in the world left that you can talk about, we're going to develop a wine industry from scratch, You could probably do some interesting things like, put a greenhouse on top of a high rise in Hong Kong or something. But it would be more of a curiosity rather than, hey, we're going to explore the range of terroirs in a beautiful organic country and so on and so forth. So,
hey, so let me ask you a question. Let's swing it back to the headline, because I have to say, Jana's headline for the top of this episode was pretty eye-opening and kind of exciting. And when we say that, we're talking about building a wine industry, and that's all very cool and fine, but did I hear something about a no reserve auction for the rarest bottle of wine in the world?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, let me first explain why we think it's the rarest bottle of wine. So let's start with, I'm gonna start with a little bit of philosophy just to contextualize it a little bit. But I mean, climate change is real. It is changing the historical wine regions of the world. Those regions will not be making the same styles and even varietals of wine in 50 or 100 or 500 years that they make today. We see it now. Like Bordeaux's introduced new varietals. The champagne producers are buying land in England. It's impacting the where you might plant in places like Napa and how you might plant. So this is real. And I think savvy long-term thinkers know that the next millennia of wine, you've got to move away from the equator. So you can go north or you can go south or you can go up. We made the decision to go up into the Himalayas randomly. It wasn't like I strategically thought about this. I was running a marathon and say, hey, this place would be awesome. But
in Indonesia.
I better be lucky than good, right? And so, being in the Himalayas and having all these different climate zones to play with allows us to really hedge bets. And it's not, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 500 years from now, the Himalayas might be one of the few places in the world producing really balanced, phenolically ripe wine for the world. And so if you start with that and you think, okay, this is maybe the verge of the next millennia, and then you think about having one of the first bottles of wine ever produced. And so roll it back 1,000 years and say, like, what if you had what the first bottle of wine ever produced in France? How historic would that be? Or the first bottle of wine ever produced in the United States? It would be in the fucking Smithsonian, you know? It would be an important real thing. And so to kind of celebrate this watershed moment, we were very careful. We made 1 barrel of the first wine from Bhutan in 2023. And so just that in and of itself, this idea that you would have the opportunity to get a bottle of wine from the first ever barrel, not even vintage, but barrel made in a new wine region is fucking cool. And we've limited it. There's only going to be 48 bottles that are going to be released to the world. So let's start with that, Dave. Let's start with the fact that this is super, super rare.
That's amazing. It must have been an amazing harvest in 2023. Like when you think about it, like how rare is it to be able to actually harvest those grapes? Like you must have put together like an amazing super team of Avengers to go and harvest that first barrel of grapes.
There were some people that definitely were fortunate enough to go and not just be a part of this. Despite the wasps and the cobras and the other challenges.
I didn't see a monkey, but I saw a lot of giant wasps.
I mean, Dave, you got to update your LinkedIn profile to include winery assistant maker for the 2023, first barrel vintage. Jana, you too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really special thing. Obviously, you guys were there when I cut my first bunch of Malbec, and I broke down and had to go take a minute, to myself over the corner because, this all was predicated on this assumption that I was right and this would be terroir. And I remember cutting that first bunch going, oh, what if it sucks? What if it sucks? But it didn't. And, thank God. But yeah, it was pretty powerful experience for sure.
Okay. So hold on a second. We're jumping ahead to the auction. And obviously this is what this is all about. We want to make sure that everyone's aware that this is happening so they can participate. But I think we need a little bit more background into what is in the bottle. So, okay. How many grape varieties are planted in Bhutan, and how did you decide what varieties you were going to plant there? Because there's obviously so many different microclimates and altitudes, and it must be just like a science experiment.
It's a total science experiment. And so we did a whole bunch of analysis on the front end and consulted with a bunch of experts, and everybody essentially concluded we have no idea. And so we said, well, we can study this to death or we can start trying stuff. And so we ended up, today we have 9 vineyards at altitudes from 500 feet up to 9,000 feet, trying to find the sweet spot. And then we have 17 different varietals. So we have 10 reds, 5 whites, and 2 hybrids. Then we are trying various combinations of those at all our different vineyards, once again, to try to figure out what works best where. And we're starting to dial it in. I mean, the 2024 vintage was really eye-opening in terms of which varietals excel at which soil types and which elevations. But in 2023, that was kind of the first year that some of our vines were starting to produce. And so we had this idea of let's make a first barrel. And we went round and around about, well, which one should it be? Should it be a white? Should it be a red? Which red? Should it be Cab? Should it be Syrah? Should it be Pinot? And ultimately, we concluded that truly, to make this a watershed moment, what we should really do is combine all of the grape varietals, whites and reds, from all of the vineyards that produced that year and make it sort of truly represent Bhutan's entry into the world of fine wine, which is interesting. Not only is it this cool barrel, it's also a blend that will never be repeated in history, but it's got Riesling and Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc and a little bit of Chenin, and it's got Pinot and Cab and Merlot and a little bit of Malbec in there. So it is kind of a unique blend, and I like that. Actually, one of the cool things that we are planning on doing, Dave, you and I talked about this, and I think it's really cool, is we are going to start a Solera system off of that first barrel so that we'll have 1 barrel of wine for the next 100, 200 years that has molecules of every single vintage for the history of the country, which I think The mother barrel. If we
like a mother sourdough. That's awesome.
Yeah.
like a mother sourdough. And imagine like 200 years from now, you still have this one barrel and there's a small amount of wine that gets produced every year. And you get to taste every vintage of every Bhutanese wine for forever.
I don't know why, but this reminds me of the second to last episode of Succession. Did you ever see Succession?
I burned out on the last episode, the last season. I never finished it.
The second to last episode, there's a scene, I think it's called The Blend. It's disgusting, but you should watch it. It's cool. Anyways, it reminds me a little bit of that.
I'll check it out. So it's going back to why is this the most rare bottle potentially in world history, I think. So number one is it's this idea of first barrel from a new region, and potentially not just Bhutan, but the Himalayas, as we've been calling it the new world, because 300 or 400 years from now, it's going to be the new world. Number two, it's a very unique blend that will never be repeated, but probably by design. Like, who's going to mix Riesling and Pinot and Cab together? But there's other aspects of it that I think make it really unique. And one is the idea of format. And so we're all, of course, used to the 750s and double magnums and Nebuchadnezzars and Salmazars and Belchiors and or Melchiors and Balthazars and so on and so forth. But we felt strongly that we should come up with a new large format. And we did, and we called it the Himalaya. And so the Himalayan is 7.57 liters. And we just specifically designed it with that level of precision because Gangkhar Punshem is the world's highest unclimbed mountain, and it stands at 7,570 meters tall, and it is sacred, and it will never be climbed ever. And so the idea of creating a large format that sort of...
You forgot to mention that. It's in Bhutan.
Oh, and it's in Bhutan. Yeah. It just randomly exists. It also happens to be in Bhutan. That's a good point, Anna. Thanks for
just a minor detail.
Picking up on that.
But wait a minute. So how many Himalayas are you going to make?
So this year we're going to release 2.
Oh, great. So it's not the rarest because there's 2.
Well, yeah, you would think. But of the 2, only one of them is being released to the global markets. The other one is being presented to his...
The other one's going to my cellar.
Yeah, well, if your cellar happens to be owned by His Majesty, the King of Bhutan, then sure. But yeah, so obviously His Majesty, we've been very grateful for his support in getting this project off the ground, and it's his country. And so, he's getting the first Himalaya. And it's going into his private collection.
That's awesome.
The rest of the world gets one. So you're getting a barrel that will never be reproduced, and a blend that will never be reproduced, in the very first edition of a new format, of which the only other one in the world is in the collection of a king. That makes it pretty rare, pretty fast. I mean, even if you think about I got this 1945 Latoche, Magnum or double Magnum. Well, guess what? There was 5 of those, Or I've got this 1812 Echem. Well, guess what? There's more than one of those made if you can still find them. This is truly a one-of-a-kind thing. And we can never make it again. You're never going to have the first barrel again. You're never going to have the first Himalayan format again. You're never going to have the first blend again. It's truly, for a serious collector, it's a one-of-a-kind.
I would encourage someone to contest that. I think, oh my gosh, that sounds like a real... Like you said, that should be in the Smithsonian. But what does a no reserve auction mean? Can you explain that?
Well, a no reserve auction means, so normally, let's say I'm going to sell my 1971 GTO, at auction, and it's all kitted out. And, I know in my mind it's worth $75,000, but I hope I get $200,000 for it. So I set up a reserve price that says, hey, look, have an auction. But if it doesn't meet this price, 75 grand, don't sell it. And what happens is then that weeds out, someone's getting lucky at the auction and stealing. For us, our goal with this auction is not necessarily to make $1 zillion, nor is it to, try to maximize the sort of the collectability. It's really, truly, we want to introduce this with the world. We want to share. We could have kept every bottle. I could have given both Himalayas to His Majesty, for example. But really, truly, the idea of this, we think this is special and important and an inflection point for the world of wine. And we want to give people the opportunity to be able to bring this into their cellars if they're serious collectors. And so consequently, we said, look, we're not going to have a reserve. Now, the risk for us is nobody bids on it and everyone walks away with it for $5, right? I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. And that's the risk you take when you do a no reserve auction. But we strategically concluded it made the most sense in terms of our objectives and priorities, which is get this out to the world and kind of let everybody know Bhutan's here and this is the future of wine, we think.
And so you're doing this on eBay, is that right?
No, we are not doing this on eBay.
Okay.
So, there's a handful of wine auction companies that have the global breadth and the prestige to be able to pull off something like this at with the level of respect that it deserves. We interviewed, there's a very small, handful of companies that can do this. We interviewed them and we ultimately selected Bonhams as our partner for a number of reasons. They seem to be the best fit. And so Bonhams will be our partner. So the auction will be through them, through their global fine wine sales division.
So how does one participate? When does it start?
So it starts April 3rd. And one participates by going to Bonhams and the wine section, or you can just Google Bonhams Bhutan wine and the link will be top of the list. Not a lot of other competing Bonhams Bhutan wine links.
Jana, we should put a link in the show notes.
No kidding.
We could display one on the screen if someone was a savvy video editor, Jana.
We will when I edit it, Mike.
Click here.
A picture of your tattoo and the outtakes.
Like on my Bhutanese tattoo. It'll take you right there.
It's 100% being offered online. So that the link in the website is where you can find all of the lot listings. And it starts April 3rd and it closes April 24th.
And we are not just auctioning off the Himalaya. We, in sort of everything in Bhutan happens on this philosophy of gross national happiness. And all the projects need to adhere with the 4 pillars of gross national happiness, which are good governance, environmental sustainability, economic growth, and equity of access to all. And so we try to incorporate those principles into our business model as much as we can. And so this idea of full access, we don't want to just have a Himalaya that is going to be expensive and only certain people can buy. So we've got some 5 liters, some 3 liters, some magnums. We've got a handful of 750s. And then we actually did spin off and make just a tiny, tiny bit of white, of which we're releasing 6 bottles of the first white ever produced. We didn't have very much, but we had some and it was cool. So 6 of the lots are 1 red and 1 white. And that actually might be the most rare thing in the world, more so than the Himalaya. But there is 6 of them and there's only 1 of the Himalaya. So there's lots of different things, to bid on at a lot of different price points. So I think if people want to have a piece of this, but don't want to pony up for the Himalaya, there's other ways they could play.
That's awesome. Well, what are your plans for wider distribution? So beyond this vintage?
Before we get into that, I would like to just take a second to make a plug for authenticity. And so given the special nature of these bottles, we felt strongly that we ought to utilize some leading edge technologies to prove out that these bottles are authentic. And you sort of get into do we do the physical asset or do we do it digitally? Ultimately, we concluded that we wanted to do both. So from a physical aspect, we're using the dust nanodiamond technology, which is applied to the bottle and then allows you to authenticate that bottle. And then from a digital perspective, we interviewed a bunch of different potential partners and turns out Club de Vin seemed to be the ones that fit best with our philosophy and our, as well as having kind of leading edge tech. So we're doing all the digital side of it through Club de Vin. And I think to my knowledge, we're probably the only wine company in the world that is looking at authentication from a non-repeatable physical, non-repeatable digital perspective, which is also kind of cool. I guess that's a 5th reason why this is the rarest bottle in the world. I don't know anybody else that's doing that.
The first of many. There will be many more. And my understanding, Mike, is that as part of that, we've offered that every auction winner is going to become a Club de Vin member,
which allows them to lots of access to other cool things that are not Bhutan wine, other things that are cool, but perhaps not as cool as Bhutan wine.
Not as cool as
Not
Bhutan
as
wine.
cool, but yeah, so which is an awesome perk. And, obviously we're all biased here, and me having been a Club de Vin member since the beginning, I can attest I've done some cool shit.
And Dave wearing his Bhutan wine hat and me having my dragons in the background, we might all be a little biased.
I love the dragons, by the way. I almost said something, but I was like, that seems too self-aggrandizing to sort of point out.
I don't have my dragon tattoo yet, or my, with the dust eyes, but bucket list.
Soon enough.
So let's say these auction winners, they're going to be pretty excited about Bhutan and pretty excited about the Bhutan Wine Company, but it's kind of hard to get there. Are there going to be opportunities, do you think, for people to be able to visit, especially the auction winners, to be able to visit the vineyards, do barrel tastings? Like, what is that like? I mean, we went and it was pretty cool, and we took some Devon members last year, and that was pretty cool. But like, what's going to be the possibility for people to be able to visit in the future, and what is that experience like?
So we have a whole series of things that we're rolling out. Projected rollout is around May 1st, after the auction concludes. One of those is a whole series of experiences that are available to people. And they are vineyard experiences, wine bar experiences, and winery experiences. And they sort of run the gamut from very, very bespoke, customized, cool things to sort of, here's some generic stuff, visit a vineyard, taste some wine in the vineyard. So anyone who happens to be going to Bhutan and wants to do one of those things, all of that'll be on our website early May. Then there are people who might want to come to Bhutan for this purpose, not like they're going for other reasons, and while they're there, they want to do something, but they want to take a wine tourism trip. And so all of that will be available to folks as well. And we have partnered with a travel company that will sort of look at people's schedules and figure out what they want to do, and then tailor a trip specifically for them. So lots of opportunities and different ways to experience that. But we acknowledge that it's hard to get to, it's expensive, you need visas, there's a lot of challenges to just, you don't just jump on a plane and fuck off to Bhutan for a weekend of fun. It's a whole thing, right? So the flip side of it is we are planning that we'll be bringing Bhutanese experiences to the world as well. It's yet unclear when those will start. They may start as soon as midsummer. They may not start until next summer. They may run the gamut from, private tastings or invite-only tastings in various cities to club type events. And then we're also looking at group stuff. I know, Dave, you've got this group coming over to India in November, and like India to Bhutan, super easy. So, we might make it available to folks that are on that trip and want to peel off 3 or 4 days on the front or back end and come do some cool shit in Bhutan from a wine perspective, and other things like that. Partnering with the right sort of close events or groups that are kind of focused on this. I've even kicked around the idea of bringing over, one of the Institute of Masters of Wine trips to look at a nascent wine region. That might be super cool. So
I'm coming on that one.
I feel like there's been some pretty big names in wine already in Bhutan. Is there anyone that you want to mention?
Oh, Jana, come on. No, I mean, you're just embarrassing me now.
Dave, you're so modest.
No. So wasn't Jancis Robinson?
Besides Dave, there's been...
Other than Dave, and excuse me, Dave, I've been there twice, so calm down.
Okay.
I've done 2.
So one of the things that we tried to do is really make this a collaborative environment. This can't be the Mike and Ann show. And so, really trying to partner with the government, trying to partner with the right people in the country and the Ministry of Agriculture and Forests, and as well as the right kind of external people to help bring this project to life. And so as a component of that, we established an advisory board where we really looked to folks with kind of the industry and knowledge to really help make sure that we don't fuck this up. And so, I think we're very fortunate to have Jancis Robinson join us on the board, and everyone knows Jancis. She needs no introduction. She came over to Bhutan with us last August and had a great time. And wrote about how exceptional she thought the wines were. My words, not hers. But it's kind of like we added Adrian Garforth, who many people know as the former CEO and chairman of the Institute of Masters of Wine, and CEO of a handful of different wine companies. We added Christian Holzhausen, who's probably one of the premier public relations people in the wine space. And then we added some other folks from other disciplines, like the academic discipline. We got an ex-professor from Cornell to help advise us on viticulture stuff. So we really sort of tried to pack that advisory board with folks who were, had names. And then, of course, Dave, which really rounded it out. Well, who else do we have? We have the Lori Bedoin, who was the ex-CFO of Duckhorn, who took Duckhorn public before retiring. And near as I know, I think we're the only thing that she's doing post-retirement, which sort of speaks volumes to how cool people think this is. So I'm very, very pleased with the level of talent that we've been able to attract. But I think that speaks to this story. This story hasn't been done and probably won't be done. And so what are you going to just make another Napa Cab or make another Burgundy, another white Burgundy? Like, it's cool, but it's not this level of cool.
No. And I think, we're close to time, but I think one of the things you touched on earlier was the gross national happiness thing in Bhutan. But we haven't really, I don't know that we've really painted the picture of what Bhutan is like when you're actually there and what the people are like and the culture and everything. We've talked about the wine and all the different microclimates and all the, the experimental side of it. But I think one of the things for me after being there, I was really fortunate enough to be there twice. And both times it was just blown away by the people and the culture. And so I think that from an experiential perspective, that is just unparalleled.
The line that I use is every time I go to Bhutan, I come home a better human being.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So one last question. If since we're still kind of on the experiential side of things, what if somebody wanted to participate in Harvest? Is that still going to be a possibility?
Certainly, that's one of the things that we have as part of our experiences is the vineyard experience / winery experience.
Okay.
Part of this is a function of timing, though, right? Obviously, harvest and or winemaking occurs at certain points in the year. The cool thing about Bhutan is because we have so many microclimates, our harvest begins in June and ends in October. So there's a lot of shit going on in the summertime. And what we'll probably do, I don't know that we'll do it for this year, just given how much other stuff we've got going on, but maybe in future years, we will probably set up, in addition to any sort of bespoke trips that groups want to put together, we'll probably have some standardized trips that says, this week, we're taking 20 people or 30 people, whatever the number is, in to do a pure immersion wine experience. I kind of, the thing about Bhutan, as you know, having been there, there's so much just powerful cultural stuff that I would hate to have someone go all the way there and then just work in a vineyard for 8 days and not get to hike Tiger's Nest and not get to go see the Buddha and, these other cool things. So we will probably be not 100% wine, but, 70% wine, 30% culture, whatever the right split is. So, yeah, I think there'll be tons of opportunities, not just, next year, but hopefully we do it every year for forever.
Awesome.
And imagine being one of the people who was the first. Jana, you were the first year and the second year.
I know. I need the tattoo. I need 2 tattoos.
Yeah.
My God, if I can participate in all the harvests, I'll be covered.
But when you think about that, like how many Westerners really participated in both year 1 and year 2? Me, you, and Jana, and then Kyle. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing.
Oh, I guess Henry and Ryan. Well, but Ryan and Henry didn't really participate year 2. They came on the back end for the party.
Yeah, but they also weren't there for year 1, were they?
Yeah, well, they were there late in the year, October.
Yeah.
So we.
Yeah.
Dave's 12. Well, at the time she was 12. Dave's daughter got to. How cool is that? Got to participate in the
Definitely
first harvest
the youngest.
I think that the real issue, Jana, is do you want to break your streak?
I can't break my streak.
Can't break the streak.
Can't break my streak.
I have to come back and get a tattoo before I'm the last one to get the tattoo.
Well, I think, we said we were going to go in May, and looks like we're shifting it to probably July. So, and that's when Ann and I are getting our tattoos. So
look,
maybe
don't tempt me with a good time or a tattoo. So also we weren't recording yet earlier, but one of the kind of stories from the first harvest, my first trip to Bhutan, was I had recently started getting tattoos because I don't know, I got the tattoo bug. And so I got to Bhutan. I'm like, Mike's covered in tattoos. I'm like, Mike, I have to get a tattoo while I'm in Bhutan. And he's like, no, like we're not doing that. And now we're all doing it. So
we're doing it very specifically.
Yeah, my concern obviously with Bhutan, which doesn't necessarily have a history of a tattoo culture, is they're not necessarily on the leading edge of all of the things that you would want to see from a safety protocol perspective.
I don't know if anyone noticed, like this is not a tattoo that I should have gotten in Tbilisi at 2 a.m. either. And now I'm having it removed. So there's not always good judgment involved in this.
We've set it up now with this tattoo option that ascribes to sort of modern sterilization practices and methods. So
it's probably for the best.
What irritates me is our chief winemaker got his, and by the way, the tattoo that we're all getting, at least people in the project, is the dragon from our logo. And he got his first. And I'm so goddamn annoyed with it. Because I'm like, do you know who fucking started this whole thing? Like, I should have gotten the first one, but he beat me to the punch. So,
well, maybe you can get yours in Indonesia and then like meet back up.
Well, but here's the other cool thing that we are doing. And we mentioned this on the preamble, which people are missing, is we are going to put a little drop of that first barrel wine into the ink for all the tattoos. So, and Matt, when he got his, he didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so afterwards, I was like,
I'm doing it.
We have the first of that.
The first real tattoo. And he's like, oh shit, I should have thought of that. I was like, yeah,
so no gangrene for Matt. That's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like we all have to do it together though. I know. And this is now for anyone listening. This is like, okay, we went on a tangent again. This happens. But that's what editing is for.
I think we've got time. Thank you. It's been a long show, but a good show.
Thank you guys you guys have been such amazing partners in this journey with us for, probably 3 years now, Dave, and probably 6 or 7 since you and I first started talking about it. And it's just so wonderful to be on the journey with some folks who sort of get it and want to go with us. So glad to have you.
I'm super excited about it.
Global Divin team.
Yeah, it's so cool to just be able to, tell this story and let alone be part of it. So really, really happy to support you guys. And this auction, I am so honest. I'm beyond excited for this auction. So again, guys.
Wait, let me ask you a question, Jana. Let me ask you a question. You've been all over to many, many wine regions. And I would bet that when people ask you about wine regions and which ones you visited, what percentage of the time does that conversation inevitably wind up in Bhutan?
Always now.
Always.
But it's always like you can't just like touch that. Then it's like a deep dive and people are like, wait, what? Yeah. It's funny. A lot of people won't admit it. Like they'll be like, oh, Bhutan. Yeah. And then I'll always be like, but do you know where it is? And like, you got to dig a little deeper and no. So it's the best story to tell for so many reasons. But yes, you are 100% right, Mike. That's always where it ends up.
And how cool would it be if any of the Divin guys or girls, I don't want to mean to be gender specific there, but like want to go and have that experience too. Like we would love to host anyone and everyone and share this really fucking bitchin' thing that we're doing with anyone who wants to experience it. So open invitation to the world.
It is historical. It's the last frontier in wine. And the final plug, guys, this is the no reserve auction for the rarest bottle of wine on earth. So, get on it. Starts April 3rd. Thank you, Mike and Ann. Thanks
guys.
Dave.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
From the moment I set foot in the Kingdom of Bhutan, I knew with 100% certainty that this place could be one of the next great wine regions in the world.
Bhutan, being a small country as it is, sandwiched between two giant nations in the Himalayas, for us, identity is extremely important, and that's why the emphasis on wearing our national dress and preserving our unique culture.